Hi folks, so today I wanted to do a video that would hopefully appeal to both the campers or the wild campers and the beginner astrophotographers amongst you who watch my channel. And the reason I wanted to do this was that last weekend I hit 1,000 subscribers, and I really wanted to say thank you very much to all of you who have subscribed and who support my channel. It means a great deal to those of us that make videos to feel that people are enjoying them and that they're watching them and commenting and giving likes and all that sort of thing. So for me, I was chuffed to bits to get to 1,000 subscribers. So yeah, thank you all. So I know that a lot of wild campers like taking photographs of lit up tents and all that sort of thing at night. And are interested to see how do you do that and get starry skies and things in the background, and also potentially taking photographs of things like the Milky Way, because when you're out wild camping you're usually in quite a dark sky area, and if the skies are clear it's an absolute golden opportunity to take pictures of the Milky Way and such like. Those people who are just starting out intending to go down the astrophotography route are often a bit wary about spending too much money on kit, because you don't know whether you're going to like it, and it can be a very expensive hobby. It doesn't have to be, and I certainly don't spend huge amounts of money. So I thought I'd make this video for people really just starting out and not wanting to buy any kit whatsoever. So in this video, I'm going to show you how you can take a picture of starry skies or the Milky Way or whatever, just using a DSLR camera and a kit lens and a bog standard tripod. So yeah, welcome back to my channel. My name's John and I make videos on camping, astronomy and walking. If you like what you see in this video, then please check my channel out, as there may be others that interest you there. But in the meantime, let's crack on with today's video. What really started me out on astrophotography was several years ago. I'd driven down to a place called Burling Gap on the south coast. It's about an hour or so from my home, with my telescope, because I wanted to look at some objects that were very low to the south, and my back garden doesn't give me a view of that. And so I'd set myself up and I was enjoying myself down there, and after about an hour or so a lady happened to walk past me, asked me what I was doing, and so I explained to her, let her have a look through my telescope and stuff. And she said that she was on a Milky Way walk, and I asked her what was a Milky Way walk, and she said she was basically walking along the coast taking photographs of the Milky Way. And I thought it wasn't dark enough or whatever to achieve that sort of thing. So she showed me what she was doing and how easy it actually is to take photographs of things like the Milky Way. And I couldn't believe it. I hadn't got a DSLR camera with me at the time. I was just using my telescope. But she showed me on her setup how straightforward it was. And really, it was amazing. I couldn't wait to get back with my camera and have a go myself. And really, that's what started me off on the slippery slope of astrophotography. But today we're going to go through the tips that she gave me on that meeting and show you how easy it actually is to get some quite nice pictures. The kit used is a bog standard Canon 1300 DSLR with a kit lens 18 to 55mm. The whole lot's mounted on a dirt cheap tripod. I think it was about 15 quid from Amazon. It's dead wobbly, so not ideal. And people often ask me what this bit is on my camera. That's a little red dot finder that helps me set the shots up, but you don't really need that. So first of all, I'll talk you through some shots that I've done over the last few years, along with the settings and a little bit of the background. Then we will talk about what settings to start off with in your camera that will get you started. You have to tweak them around a little bit, but they're good starting settings, and then you can adjust them as you need to. And after that, we'll go out into the back garden and take a picture of a relatively dim section of the Milky Way, just to show you, how easy it is to do, basically. So yeah, first of all, let's look at some of the pictures that I've taken over the last few years. So this is a picture of Comet Neowise from July 2020, I think. I was on a wild camp on a hill, and this is a 10-second shot taken with a 24mm lens. I think the ISO was 400 because the sky was quite bright, and I remember it being washed out at the higher ISOs, and the f-stop for the lens was fully open, which would have been about 1.8 for that lens, I think. This was a shot taken in December 2020, and really all I was trying to do was to get an illuminated tent with some stars in the background. The shot duration was about 8 seconds. The ISO was 800 in this case, and the f-stop was again fully open, sort of 1.8 or so. This was taken on the wild camp where I was trying to get the Comet Neowise that you saw earlier. So again, I was really just trying to get an illuminated tent on the hillside, but I managed to get the Milky Way in on the top right hand corner. You can see the light pollution coming up from the bottom of the sky, which is from New Haven on the coast. Again, this was with a 24mm lens with the f-stop wide open. The ISO this time was 800, I think, and the bright object that you can see above the tent is Jupiter. And this is the image that I took down at Berlin Gap when I belted back down there a month or so after meeting my Milky Way walk lady. And so this was taken with a kit lens 18 to 55mm at 18mm. The f-stop was, I think, 3.5. That's as low as that lens goes. And the ISO was 1600. Exposure time in this case was around 20 seconds. I put this image in just to show that you can still get the night sky even if you're using your phone. This was taken with my Android phone, which is a Galaxy S10, which isn't particularly fantastic for night shots. But there's the moon and Jupiter, and it'll be really hard to see, but there's Saturn in there as well. The modern Apple phones and the modern Androids, like the Galaxy S20 for example, are actually quite good at taking astrophotos. I think they've often got a little function you can press, like star image or night image or something like that. This wasn't. This was just handheld bog standard setting on my phone, but nonetheless, I was still quite pleased with what came out of it. Yeah, so in true Blue Peter fashion, those were some shots that I took earlier, if you like. So now let's look at what camera settings you might use prior to going out and taking a shot live, if you like. The first and most important thing is it's just too dim for it to be able to do autofocus. And the thing to do is to put it on manual and point your camera at a light that's some distance away and do a manual focus on that. So I've got a street lamp about 200 meters that way that I tend to point my camera at, and I'll focus on that, and I'll either leave the focus just as it is, or sometimes I'll actually put a little bit of sellotape on the camera to stop the focus ring slipping. So that's the best way of getting a good focus. And when you are focusing in on that street lamp or distant light and you're using a DSLR, you want to magnify the image by a factor of 10 so that you can actually get quite a good focus that way. The second setting that you've got to pay attention to is the exposure time. Now if you've got too long an exposure time, that will create star trailing. Too short an exposure time and you won't be getting the data that you want. And there's a little equation that helps you work out what the maximum exposure time it is, and it's basically called the 500 rule. So you take your lens focal length, and this evening I'm going to be using an 18 to 55 millimeter kit lens, but I'm going to have it set to 18 millimeters. So what you do is you take the number 500 and divide that by 18, and that gives you what theoretically is the maximum exposure time before you get star trailing. 500 divided by 18 is about 26 or 27, something like that. However, my camera and most of the kind of cheaper DSLRs are cropped sensor cameras. So this equation really assumes a full frame sensor. If you've got a cropped sensor, then I tend to take the number that comes out of that equation and divide it by about 1.3, which gives me what I expect to be an exposure time without getting star trailing, which works out about 21 seconds. So for tonight, I'm going to be using 20 seconds just to keep it simple. And the thing to do is you take your shot and you look to see whether you've got any star trailing or not. If you have, you lower the exposure time. Theoretically, if you haven't, you can crank it up a bit, but I just usually go by the equation. So 500 divided by the focal length, and then divide the result of that by 1.3. The next setting is the f-stop or the aperture, and I tend to make the aperture as wide as possible, so that's the lowest f-stop that the camera will allow you to put in for a particular lens. My kit lens, the lowest it will go is something like 3.5. If I'm using my 24mm lens, just the non-zoomy type lens, I think that can go down to 1.8. But whatever you want the f-stop as wide as possible. And the final setting that you want to put in is the ISO that you're going to be operating at. Now I usually use a starting point of ISO 1600 and take a picture and see how it comes out. If the sky is completely washed out, then I drop that to 800 or even 400. But if the sky isn't washed out, then the temptation sometimes is to bump the ISO up to 3200. For my camera, once I start going to about 3200, I get a very noisy image, lots of little colour specks in it. So I tend to use 1600 as my maximum and work down from there. At the time of filming this, it's early July, so the sky doesn't really get very dark. So I'm expecting when I do an ISO of 1600 to get a washed out sky and have to drop it down, but we'll see how that goes on this evening. But the key is you need to have the manual controls on the camera. The other thing that it's really handy to have but not essential is a remote shutter release or something like an intervalometer, because you don't really want to be touching your camera directly. So if your camera's got the port to put a remote shutter or a intervalometer in, then use that. If it hasn't got that, and some of the very base model DSLRs don't have that port, then the thing to do is to set it on a time delay of about 10 seconds, and by the time you've pressed the shutter and allowed 10 seconds to pass, then things should have settled down. So yeah, so this evening I'm going to basically take a shot at ISO 1600 or ISO 800, 20-second exposure time, 18mm is going to be the focal length that I'm going to use, and I'm going to have an f-stop of, I think it's 3.5, it might be 3.2, whatever the lowest that I can get away with on that lens is. So yeah, having gone through that, let's see how we get on actually doing it all in practice. So this is the area of sky we're going to be shooting. It's basically the constellation Cygnus, and you can see the Milky Way running across the image here. Compared to the core of the Milky Way, this bit's relatively dim, but I can't get the core. It's too low down in the south from my house, so I'm forced into looking at something like this. Nonetheless, Cygnus sits nicely above the roof of my house at a sort of 10:30, 11 o'clock, and is easily spotted because the star Deneb is a naked eye star. Even in heavy light pollution, it's blindingly obvious. So yeah, that's the area that we're going to be looking at tonight. It is forecast to clear in a couple of hours or so. By the time 10 o'clock came, the clouds had all miraculously gone and it was looking really, really good. So yeah, I was confident of at least getting something this evening. And this is the target area that we'll be pointing the camera at. So off we go, time to take a shot. This is on ISO 800 and the result looks pretty promising. So I'm going to take a whole bunch of shots so that if I get star trails or ones with satellites running through, I can just pick a good one out. And this is looking really, really promising. You can see the Milky Way in there. So I'm now going to take perhaps 20 or so 20-second shots at those settings, and I'm sure I'll have some decent ones in there. So all in all, I was very pleased with the outcome of last night, really, considering I used an extremely cheap tripod here, a bog standard camera that's bottom but one in the range, I think, and I'm shooting from my back garden, which is an urban environment, so I haven't got very dark skies, and I was shooting a portion of the Milky Way that isn't the brightest bit. So yeah, I was sort of pleasantly surprised with what came out. It's been a long time since I've really just gone off with a kit lens to see what I can get. So I'm going to put the pictures up now. I took about 20 photos, sifted some out with clouds and things that were passing through them. And so I'm going to show a single exposure, 20 seconds, ISO 800, taken with 18mm lens at f3.5, I think. I'm going to show that straight off the camera, and in fact you can see the Milky Way just about in that shot. I then took that image into my phone and did a little bit of editing in Photoshop Express, which is free, just fiddling around with the contrast and stuff, and that brought the Milky Way out a little bit more. And the image there is quite pleasing, really, for a single shot. But I had, as I say, 18 or 20 exposures of the same thing. So what I then decided to do was to take those 18 to 20 exposures and stack them together in a free program called Sequitur, which helps eliminate noise that's in the photograph and helps bring out some detail. And I'm going to show that as the final image on this video. And you can see actually it's a significant step up from just a single image. If any of you are interested in doing this, then I'll put a link to my video that I did, which assumes absolutely no knowledge whatsoever how to process an astrophoto, and it includes a step-by-step guide to this stacking program Sequitur. But it's dead simple, but if you follow it through, you'll find out. And at the end of the day, you're only taking short exposures, so whether you take 1 or you take 20 doesn't really take very long at all. So yeah, hopefully those of you that are interested in dipping your toe and taking some pictures of the night sky, this has shown you that you can get some quite interesting stuff without using anything other than your camera and a cheap tripod. And if you're off wild camping, then it's really good. If you can get your tent with a bit of Milky Way or a starry sky or something like that, that's really, really nice. I really enjoy the images that I get of that. And as you can see, it's not very difficult to do. So yeah, on that note, I shall put the images up now, the ones that I took from my garden, and yeah, wish you cheerio and see you next time.